Is the truth here? I'm not so sure, but welcome everyone. I'm going to be talking about season 1, episode 2 of the X Files. It's called Deep Throat. So, episode 1 I watched a couple of years ago for a random pilot thing, so I had kind of a vague memory of it. And despite the fact that I think I watched season 1 a long time ago, I don't remember anything from any of these episodes that we're getting into now. So this was like a completely fresh thing. Um, as the title would suggest, it introduces a character who I'm just going to call Deep Throat because we don't get a name for him. He was a guy in a suit, like a lot of characters on this show, who shows up to talk to Mulder and gives him some advice. I guess the notable thing about this episode is that a young Seth Rogen appears, who of course is not Seth Rogen. Oh, I'm talking. Seth Rogen. Seth Green appears. Not a young. Jesus Christ! What? I'm not even a minute into the review and I've already ballsed up someone's name. Not only will I probably swap Mulder and Scully's names 100 times in this, apparently I'm now confusing the Seths of the world. But yeah, Seth Green shows up, who is known for many things, but of course you might remember him as Oz in the hit television show Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So I'm not sure what to make of this episode, actually. It's kind of a weird one. I thought, like, it introduces this thing at the start, the opening scenes, this cold open, where the military police are coming into this house in Idaho. And it's basically someone from the local Air Force base is held up with guns or something. But when they come in and find him, he's kind of huddled in the corner and he's got like a rash all over his body and he looks very... like he's having a breakdown of some kind, like he's not all there. And that's what leads into the opening titles. Which, so on the opening titles, they're very famous music. It was nice to hear it. It wasn't in episode 1, which is quite common for pilots not to have the actual title sequence that the rest of the episodes do, because they're made before that is produced. But I get the feeling people can tell me if I'm wrong here, but this feels like it was redone for this modern HD version. Basically, and all I mean by that is that the text in the opening title sequence feels out of place. At the end of it, when it says the truth is out there on the screen, it looks really cheap because it looks like this really modern, just like, I don't know, like someone just typed it in a computer in present day without matching whatever the original font was. And maybe it is the original font, I don't know, but it looked really tacked on, as if someone had just like slapped it on with a modern I don't know, it looked out of place. People can tell me if I'm completely wrong. Maybe that's how it always looked, but it just looks, there's a disconnect between the visuals of the opening title sequence and the font that is on top of it. It just looks too clean and neat and I don't know, basic, I guess. But anywho, and that was the setup of the episode. And Mulder wants to do this case. Everyone's kind of sweeping it under the rug, but he of course is interested. And Scully doesn't get it. Scully's like, I thought you were only into the weird cases. How does this relate to an X-File? And I actually didn't understand why she was saying any of this, because I thought it was really obvious that this was probably UFO related. It's like a test pilot Air Force base. My mind immediately went to UFO shit. I could see how that connects, but Scully doesn't get that right away, and it's not until she looks into the files and learns that there was rumors of UFOs in this town and whatnot, and near this Air Force base, that she's like, you're up to stuff, Mulder. But yeah. Anyway, so it's kind of a weird episode to me because it sets up this mystery with the pilot who's missing. The wife of this pilot from the start of the episode, she's put in a complaint that he's effectively missing, or actually not missing, the direct terminology was kidnapped, that he's been kidnapped by the military and they won't give him back. And Mulder wants to investigate this. But while obviously that does take up a significant several portion and scenes of the episode, it does, there's scenes of him returning halfway throughout the episode, but he seems to have forgotten a lot of things about his job. Stuff like that. It does feel like the way it pivots into being more about possible UFOs, or more specifically in this case, experimental aircrafts based on UFO technology. The way it kind of pivots into that felt a little weird to me, because it felt like it felt like the mystery of like what was going on to these men, these pilots, because it turns out he's not the only one who's had like missing, time and memories. And Mulder immediately jumps to, oh, they're somehow erasing specific parts of their brains to cover things up. Which I will just say that Mulder to me in episode 2 still feels like he is just like immediately jumping to the most extreme things, and Scully is absolutely justified in being skeptical with everything Mulder says. I don't know if that's how everyone felt when they were watching this, but it's how I'm feeling watching this episode. Despite the fact that we get proof and we see things that are going on later in the episode, and the fact that it turns out to be true is almost irrelevant. The way he just jumps to they're erasing parts of people's brains was immediately like, okay, Mulder, you sound like a fool. You sound like a crazy man. The fact that you're right, I know he's right. Like, it's a TV show. I'm watching a TV show. I get that we're going to just do the thing, by and large, but it just immediately felt weird to me. But yeah, it does this pivot where it becomes more about trying to see what the Air Force are building and what they're hiding. And I get the the link obviously is okay, they don't want this to get out, so these pilots are having their minds. But I feel like the connection that is made at one point is that when Mulder's saying they're building these things that are based on UFO technology, and because these things are moving in ways the aircrafts don't normally move, right? And there's a pretty good scene of Mulder and Scully watching these two lights in the sky, and they're moving around really quickly and changing direction very rapidly. And Scully's like, oh, maybe it's like lasers that are pointing to the sky because no aircraft can move like this. But then they kind of go up and they hear a noise like they're breaking the barrier and going up through the atmosphere. And it's like, wait a minute, that sounded quite convincing, but I can't explain it. Scully still doesn't think they're UFOs, although Mulder rightfully points out, and I'll be on his side here, technically UFO does just literally mean unidentified flying object. It doesn't actually mean alien spacecraft. If she can't explain what the flying thing in the sky was, it is by definition a UFO. It's just that over time we've just associated UFO to directly mean, no, it's an alien spaceship. But it's not actually that necessarily. It could be that, but just anything you see in the sky you can't explain as a UFO. But there's a line that Mulder says where he says that, Air Force pilots and test pilots, like the human body can only take so much. And his theory is that these pilots are being damaged, their bodies are just like not being able to handle the way these things are moving, and that's why they're getting so injured and mentally affected by what's happening. But that almost feels like that could explain the memory loss on its own, I suppose, but we also have the military being able to just wipe parts of people's minds. That's a really big thing to just sort of like say they can do, and then seemingly by the end of the episode they do it to Mulder and he can't remember like the night that he goes out to the Air Force place and actually sees this triangular spaceship. Effectively, again, it's the military that are it's theirs, they've built it, but based on UFO technology, he sees this triangular ship, and we get a couple of sequences that very intentionally, I think, look like they're operating on him. They've got him strapped to a table. Those close-ups of his eyes. It looks a lot like an alien abduction scene. Obviously, it's not. This is just people in this like test, airbase place. But it's filmed like an alien abduction the way they're operating on him, and I think that's a very intentional visual thing. But yeah, this is such a big deal that they can just do this and that we're introducing it in episode 2. I do almost think that you could build the entire episode around that, like that they're erasing people's minds, and you could build a whole separate episode around, oh, they're building ships based on UFO tech and they're doing anything they can to cover it up. Those feel that we could just have 2 separate episodes that flesh both those ideas out. I think as it is, I feel like both of them are a little bit rushed and undercooked because they're together. I never really obviously the big scene where he sees the ship's fun, where they both Mulder and Scully see the lights in the sky are kind of fun, but I think a lot of the other stuff, it felt like it was repeating a lot of the things we got in the first episode. And if I have a concern about this show going forward now after 2 episodes, is that I might get really, really sick of like the people not talking to them. Like, the constant covering up of whatever's going on, and people saying, like, what's the examples in this episode? It's basically the army general they try and go and talk to, say he's got no comment for them. Everyone turning them away, that sort of thing. I am a little concerned after 2 episodes that I may get really sick of that, because it feels like it might be a big part of like a lot of episodes. But with that said, the Mulder and Scully like back and forth is entertaining. Like I enjoyed a lot of little beats with them in this episode. When they go to this diner that's basically UFO themed, because a lot of people come to this town thinking they might find UFOs. Mulder explains at one point that this is one of the 6 locations that allegedly pieces of the Roswell craft were sent to, and in theory that's what they're basing this technology on. But they go to this diner, and there's a little moment where he sees these photos of UFOs up in the wall, and the worker there says that she took the last one, and it's this triangular ship that ends up, looking like a ship that was filmed at Roswell, and is what he ultimately sees later in the episode. But when he agrees to buy it, Scully leans over and just whispers "sucker." And I enjoyed that. It's those little beats that I appreciated as well. But I guess that's actually there is kind of another thing that kind of felt weird to me by the end of this episode, is that we kind of escalate to a point that it feels too early to escalate to with these characters, where Mulder is effectively taken in by this Air Force base, right? And we see them operating on him and, seemingly wiping his mind. And Scully, in this time, like, I like the idea that she's like worried about him, like, where is he? She talks to Seth Green, who, because Seth Green's character and his girlfriend are these like 2 stoners who like sneak into the airbase like outskirts to watch the planes fly around and stuff. But they explain where he went, and there's this journalist who turns out to actually be a guy working for the airbase who's sort of trying to keep an eye on them. And Scully has this fun little scene, and this is a fun little scene on its own actually, where she hears like his walkie-talkie in his car, this journalist, and realizes that he's someone that works for the Air Force Base, and she dashes to his car, locks herself inside of it, finds a gun, finds the walkie-talkie, and it's actually quite a little tense scene where this guy's like tapping on the window and then eventually just smashes it with a fire extinguisher. It actually had a bit of like a, oh shit, she's in trouble now. It feels like things are ramping up. But we have this whole thing where she holds the guy at gunpoint and says, "Take me to where Mulder is," and they go to the outskirts of where the base is, and Mulder comes out the gate looking all kind of like confused, and he's like, "Oh, I've lost time. Like, where how did I get here, Scully?" But we have this whole like standoff where Scully's holding a gun and pointing to this guy who was pretending to be a journalist, and like the military security guards are letting Mulder out, and it's this handover. It's it feels like the FBI and the government are clashing here. And I guess that goes back to Deep Throat's warning that this case is too dangerous. This case might actually ruin your careers, and Mulder and Scully may have a future, doing whatever it is they do. So maybe don't ruin it by taking this case. And Mulder, of course, ignores that and takes it anyway, despite the fact that he suspects his phone is tapped. You can hear that noise where it's, you can tell it's someone's listening in. So, we really sort of amp up that there's people in the government who don't want them investigating these kinds of things, which, is interesting enough. The scene at the end with Mulder seeing Deep Throat again, and Deep Throat basically says, yeah, there's aliens here, and they've been here for a long time, and that's kind of our cliffhanger at the end of the episode. It's like, no, they have been here, and they've been here in secret for some time. Like, I know it sounds weird to complain that it feels like we're going too far too quick, but it does feel like we're going too far too quick, that someone is just confirmed, if we believe him, I suppose, right? Like, we don't really know who this guy is, what his position is, but if we take him at face value, we not only have already seen devices based on UFOs already be built, but we've already been told now the aliens are here in secret somewhere on Earth. Which is kind of like blowing my mind in a weird way, because I also like my conception, like my conception of never seeing X-Files is that it never really gets to the answers. but I feel like we're already like revealing so much blatantly that I can't imagine how we don't get to a lot of concrete information at some point. Like those two things are just not melding in my brain, and I am genuinely fascinated about how it dodges doing that. If that is indeed the case, I don't know. Um, but yeah, I did kind of feel a bit weird that like Scully's already like putting her life on the line and holding a guy at gunpoint to get him back. Like it feels like the camaraderie and like the friendship between them is maybe not quite there yet. So and maybe you could argue that this is building that. The fact that she does stick her neck out for him here, despite disagreeing with a lot of what he says. That is maybe means something, and that's cool. But it did occur to me when they go back to the wife at the end of the episode who reported her husband kidnapped. And in the middle of the episode, she was saying when the husband comes back, which seemingly happens to try and just get rid of Mulder and Scully, like, hey, the husband's back, you don't have to investigate anymore, go away. She's like, that's not my husband. She's adamant that that's not really her husband because he doesn't remember certain things. And then seemingly it is him, but he doesn't remember specific things, the white part of his memory. At the end of the episode, when they go back to see her again, after Mulder's had his whole experience, she just says that he's fine, and she makes an excuse for them not to see him and shuts the door in their face, which Mulder immediately says, oh, they got to her, they threatened her or something, and now she won't talk to us, which is probably true based on everything we've seen in this episode. But Scully like throws up her arms and says, Mulder, we know nothing. We know nothing more than what we did when we arrived, and that's what I'm putting in my field report. And in a lot of ways, that feels... It's not true for the audience, because we saw a lot of things, right? They can't take our memories away. We saw that there was a real ship there. We saw that, we saw enough to believe that the mind wiping is happening. So we see all these things, but the characters don't. Mulder doesn't remember them. But Mulder believes all this shit anyway. So I did get to the end of this episode and kind of feel like the characters didn't really advance much. Even though, okay, this idea that they know they're being watched and their phones are being tapped is important, I guess. And the introduction of this Deep Throat character, also important, and probably has some big plot ramifications down the line for some of the stuff that he's going to tell Mulder about, presumably. But I didn't find myself being that excited with their interactions at the end of the episode, because it kind of just felt like just broad, kind of like, yeah, like, I'm mysterious, I can't tell you anything, but they're here. The truth, I'm about the truth. The truth is out there, the aliens are here, and we're going to get into it. The episode, I guess it maybe suffers for some of that episode 2 syndrome, where a lot of it is just kind of re-establishing for people who missed episode 1 what the core premise of the show is. So we're hitting on a lot of the major beats, and we're maybe doing too much in one episode. The ideas on their own are relatively solid, but I think it needed to be spread out over a couple more episodes. So I hate to come into like episode 2 and already feel like I'm being really negative, but I do think this was kind of a weird episode where it didn't ramp up in a way that I found all that captivating, and the way it kind of pivoted to a separate mystery, even though they're connected, it kind of felt weird. Like the whole like husband being kidnapped and the fact that he's changed or might not really be him, or it seems to be that his mind's just been partly wiped. That almost felt like it was, I don't want to say afterthought, that doesn't feel right, but in the second half of the episode, that just didn't feel that important anymore. It felt like we really pivoted to just Mulder being obsessed with seeing some sort of spaceship or proof of a spaceship. So yeah, I don't know what would have fixed it beyond just like splitting up the story ideas a little bit and fleshing them out a little bit more. But we'll see. So yeah, I think right now, like, I still enjoyed the characters well enough. I think Scully especially is the one that's easier to get on board with right now. But I do have a sneaking concern about them constantly being like hitting these walls with people who are refusing to talk to them, and the conspiracy cover-ups. I might find that getting old. And the fact that I'm already concerned about that in episode 2 of a show that goes 11 seasons is a little, it's concerning, but it could also just be that they've not nailed like how it's supposed to feel yet. You know, like as much as I'm saying that, it's entirely possible as it finds its footing that it'll be more exciting because they'll know how to handle that material better in future episodes. But you know, having just 2 episodes of characters who refuse to tell them things, and then Mulder and Scully have to try and figure things out, I could see that part of the formula maybe getting a little bit old. So you know, we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I definitely think this is a weak episode to me. I wouldn't say I feel that positive on it overall, despite a few little moments here or there with the Mulder and Scully relationship. Mostly just Scully making fun of Mulder for being a UFO nut more than anything else. I appreciate her skepticism. But yeah, I'll see how episode 3 is next week, and we'll hopefully have a more fun time. But that is episode 2 of the X-Files. So by all means, let me know what you think of this one in the comments below. Like, subscribe, ding the bell for notifications, and of course support all the content over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, and help me keep it coming. So thank you very much. I will see you soon. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?